Alan and I have both seen Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I have no idea what Alan thinks of the film. I have my own thoughts. And so, Alan, what are your initial thoughts about this film?
Okay, my initial thoughts could be summed up by a tweet that I saw recently, and here it is. Normalize 2-hour movies.
Hey, I put that out.
Yeah. In a nutshell, I really like this movie, but damn, this movie is long. And at the final act, I'm like, just end it somewhere. You know, I mean, at least this time, unlike Fast X, I knew this was a part 1, but oh my god, it just goes on forever. And this cliffhanger has to have gone on for 20 minutes. Okay, so in terms of the film itself, I liked it. I had a good time. I'm kind of looking forward to the third one. It harkens back to the original film, the art style. In the original film, you had Miles Morales. He's in this world, kind of a comic book style world. And then other characters from the other dimensions come in, the Spider-Verses, and they're in their own art styles. And this time they kind of flip it where he's now jumping from one dimension to the next. And as he's jumping from dimension to dimension, he's in that art style, which is kind of a nice contrast. But again, this movie's long. I kind of spoiled what my daughter thought. My daughter loves this movie. She basically said it's one of her top 10 favorite movies of all time. Granted, she's not seen a lot of movies, but she absolutely adored this movie. And look, she's a big Miles Morales fan. She likes him much better than Peter Parker. So, she's a lot younger than a lot of us. So, so good, not great, and too damn long.
I love this film. I'm surprised how much I loved it. I'm really surprised. I was going into it kind of dreading it because I didn't like the trailers. I thought the trailers undersold it, or it was like, oh, this is just more of what we've already seen. How is this different? What is this about? What is the story? I was just sucked in. If you are a fan of Spider-Man, whether it's Spider-Man in the comic books, Spider-Man on television in the 70s, which I watched that old show, whether the Spider-Man cartoon, the original cartoon from the late 60s, was it late 60s or early 70s? Whether you used to play with Spider-Man action figures, whether you watched Spider-Man on the Electric Company, which was the companion to Sesame Street. So this film is about a love of not just Spider-Man, but a love of comic books, that storytelling. And I got caught up in the story that there are all these different spider people across multiverses, and they all have these defining events, and they're all very different. Miles Morales is not Peter Parker. Okay. He is his own different type of Spider-Man. And I love this. There's a scene in the sort of early half of the film where they meet a Spider-Man that's in a universe it's basically India. It's this sort of megalopolis city with Indian. It is so cool. It's like a Bollywood Spider-Man, and it's very different. Then there's Spider-Punk, and all of these different incarnations of Spider-Man, they all exist in the comics. They've been in the comics or whatnot, and they're all sort of converging at this multiverse point. And God, I loved it. Just everything from the various styles of art to, I was really impressed with the voice acting. That really impressed me. And the fact that it's a test, just a little test. I have like in my head of like, all right, am I into this during the quote boring parts? And the parts where Miles Morales interacts with his mother and father, are hilarious. They're funny, they're heartfelt, they're very relatable, and it's different than Peter Parker. Miles Morales is not Peter Parker Spider-Man. He's a altogether different type of character. So, and he's 15 years old in this, which I guess would make him like, what, 14 in the other one? He's just a 15-year-old kid, sophomore in high school. And I mean, just sort of in the broad strokes aspects, I cannot gush about it enough. Now, the running time. I agree with you, Alan. The running time, my God, it's what, 2 hours and 20 minutes?
220, yeah.
220. It could have been cut down. Having said that, also, I wasn't bored. It moves so quickly. Everything about this movie moves so quick. And when they bring in all the different spider characters, what's the name of the one that she is on the motorcycle and pregnant?
Oh, yeah, it's Jessica Drew.
Okay. I thought that worked great. I thought it was funny. It was like endearing. And like, I don't know. I just like that all the different types of Spider-Men, spider people, because there are spider women as well. Yeah.
I think it handled this multiverse very well, and kind of, honestly, if Ant-Man Quantumania hadn't showed up, this would have been a much cooler gathering of Spideys. And then the ending comes, and the lead up to the ending and the explanation of Miles Morales. I'll just leave it at that. I thought was utterly fascinating in terms of this is comic book writing. The position that Miles finds himself in amongst the Spider-Verse is like, this is whatever happened to this kind of comic book writing, because we're just not getting that anymore. And that's pretty much why I quit reading comics like 2 years ago.
But it has that kind of things, the things that you would expect that are clever in a comic. What I like was there are parts of the film where they split the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So you see in a wide shot something happening here, something different is happening down here, but you can easily follow it like you would a comic. And it's just, there are just so many moments of cleverness in it and twists, especially with the end. The end is a big twist. We're not going to talk about it, but I can't believe how much I loved it. One thing I did, because of the length of the film, I went to the bathroom twice. Curses my bladder. But I couldn't keep up with it. Sometimes it got a little distracting. I mean, this movie is definitely made for people who have ADHD. Like, it's just, look at all the stuff happening at once, because there were parts where you just see, and I'm like, oh my God, I recognize that Spider-Man, or there's the spider buggy, or there's this thing in the background, or there's this very obscure spider. Because not only did they do references to all Spider-Man in all media, that's the best way to put it. Spider-Man in the comic books, movies, video games, animated shows, every version of Spider-Man that's ever been created, including toys. There are versions of Spider-Man that you can see in this film based on toys. Okay. I just thought it was just so clever. What I was concerned about was, will it be difficult to follow the story? I think it's fairly simple. But I wonder if audiences are going to get tired of a multiverse concept. Having seen The Flash, some people are saying, well, how does this compare to The Flash? They're very different. Yes, both they involve multiverse types of stories, which is kind of a bummer. They open like so close to each other. The Flash is 2 weeks from today, but God, I could rave on and on, but I'd be getting into spoiler stuff. That's the thing, is the voice act, and like they would introduce like a spider character, a new one, right? Like Spider-Punk, which voiced by the actor, what's his name? Daniel Kaluuya.
Yeah.
Voiced Spider-Punk. I could barely understand what Spider-Punk was saying because it's such a thick, was it like a Cockney accent?
I'm not sure it's Cockney, but
I think it's Cockney.
Okay.
But it, like, the accent's so thick I could barely understand, but it didn't matter. Like, I kind of got the gist of like what he was saying, but oh my God, like Spider-Punk was great. So you're not just following Miles Morales' story. And I think they made Miles Morales just very likable, right? The conflict with his family, conflicts with school, him missing Gwen, you know, they're separated, you know, not because of, they're separated because they're in different universes, you know? And she wasn't, both of them have kind of this bond because they both really weren't supposed to be Spider-Man. They weren't supposed to be bitten by a spider. So I really like that aspect. It's like, okay, how did I get, you know, it's just an accident. And what it did was it forced Miles to become a hero. He really, in the story, in the course of the story, he is truly becoming Spider-Man because of his experiences. I really got this, that it's like a coming of age for Miles Morales, where it's like the stakes are high. There are lives at stake, real lives of people you love, and your actions have consequences, good and bad. And I loved all the different, you know, that when they introduced the Indian Spider-Man, they sort of go through a montage of his life and show how it's sort of similar but different. And I just loved every aspect of it. It's, I mean, and also the movie has like 3 credited directors. Is it 3? Who are the? Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can't pull up IMDb right now.
No, that's all good. It's all good. But it's
but Lord and Miller did write it along with someone else.
Yeah, it's the directors are Joaquin Dos Santos, Kemp Powers, and Justin K. Thompson. I mean, it needed 3 directors to be able to put all of that on screen. The audience I saw it with was packed and was applauding during like, and I'm like, oh wait, why are they applauding? It's like got to be like a character I didn't know even. Like there's so much. You have to be a Spider-Man super fan to even be able to recognize all of the references. And I didn't notice Electric Company Spider-Man. I'm just going to assume Electric Company Spider-Man was in the movie.
I think there was a title plate. Like I think it was like one of the Sony plates that looked like Electric Company.
It just, man, it's like they just took everything and put it in a room, threw it together, and it's just like, all right, this is every Spider-Man thing that exists in our world. Put it in the movie in some form. And it just worked for me with a grounded, very human story against the backdrop of these epic events across multiverses where certain things were not supposed to happen. They call these they call them canon events, which is a thing that happens to every Spider-Man.
For example, Uncle Ben's death.
Right, Uncle Ben's death or the death of someone close happens to every Spider-Man, and that's just going to happen. And there are other inevitable events. I really love this film. Surprised how much I loved it. And here's how I know. We got out of the theater and everyone could not stop talking about it. It was like people left the theater, but they just stood there and talked. Strangers were talking to each other about it. And they gave out posters. Now I regret not getting one. I gave my poster to a friend and I'm like, I should have hung on to that. But God, I really loved it. And I really think I have to see it again just because there was so much to take in that I think it almost requires a second viewing.
Yeah.
And without getting into spoilers, there are 2 big flaws with this film. One, the running time. My God, please, while it didn't feel long to me, I can imagine single-digit age kids are going to get long for them. I think this is a movie for 12 or 13 and up. Any young child is just going to get bored. It's unfortunate. Even though it's very engaging, you know, little kids I think are not going to be able to take it. So there's the running time. The second thing is it's not a cliffhanger. The movie just abruptly ends. It just, okay. To be
That was a
continued.
problem. I mean, this is
literally,
part one.
yes, I know, but maybe it's just not in the
It's called a
advertising.
cliffhanger.
But I mean,
it forces you to want to see the next movie. It ends on a really bad note for Miles, but on an inspirational note in another area.
right.
I mean, that's pretty much how you got to end these things in these part ones. So I have zero problem with the ending. With the
All
ending.
right. Well, I just felt it was just very abrupt, and I felt like I also felt like while it didn't feel long to me, it could have been shorter. It could have been shorter.
Yeah, I'll tell you my problem with the movie, and it takes place right up front with the Gwen Stacy story.
Mm.
The animation art style, I thought while watching it, I was in big trouble for the next 2 hours. But
Mm.
it's when you have a film that's in a odd art style. This whole movie is about the art styles and visually, I'll say. And hers was so confusing and so, I think there were too many tight shots that, it was hard to kind of get an idea of place in the scene, to know how the action is moving around the city and around the room. It just seemed like action was being forced there. And I was having a hard time finding context as to where characters were in a room or in a city. And it got really frustrating. And miraculously, once you got into Miles' world, the problem cleared itself up, and you knew where in New York he was, or you knew where in the room he was. That's really my own main problem with the gimmick, the Spider-Man gimmick here.
Well, the gimmick is that there are different visual styles depending on the Spider-Man. So who has the dominant style, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and then how do you use that style to tell your story? And I just felt like it started off on a weak point.
That didn't bother me because as someone who's been reading comics since I was a kid, I appreciate when someone brings something different. There is a certain style, of an illustrator, writer team conveys a certain style, and this one, a certain character would come on, and then that would inform that style, right? Like Spider-Punk had a very different visual look of just how Spider-Punk looked, and then how Spider-Punk like interacted, and then the things even surrounding Spider-Punk just looked different than the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I'm okay with different. Yeah, but I'm okay with different. But you've got to manage that. You've got to still be able to tell a story that's not confusing, and it's not that the story of the action was confusing, but it was just the setting and the context that was difficult to manage at that point. It's a really abstract art discussion we're having here.
Well,
but it really bothered me up front.
Well, I like that because it's one thing. What normally an animated movie has a style and that's it. You've got they have like a Bible and like it must be this way. And it's like they had different it's like, okay, this character is this style, this character is that style, this character. And I love that. I love that aspect. Like being a fan of comics and seeing a character that's existed as long as Spider-Man has. When was Spider-Man created? It was Amazing Fantasy number 15, which was in, I want to say 1963. Was Spider-Man created the year? So fact check me, please. Chat knows. Chat or the internet knows. It was 1963, Amazing Fantasy 15. Okay. So I just, I having seen a character that's lasted as long as that character has. Okay, so Spider-Man has been around 60 years and has gone through many different styles and different storylines. And I am like, Miles Morales is a new character, and some people might have a problem with Miles Morales. I actually think that they made Miles very likable in this movie. But Miles Morales isn't Peter Parker Spider-Man. That's a different character. But Peter Parker Spider-Man is in this. The other thing that I thought worked so well was the Peter Parker Spider-Man with the baby.
Yeah.
Oh my, or he's like bringing the baby with him. Oh my God.
And the baby has powers, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, the chat is saying 1962. My apologies. 1962, Amazing Fantasy 15. At least I got that right.
Yeah. Look, I'll say this about Miles Morales. I liked Miles Morales when he debuted. 10 years ago, the Brian Michael Bendis Ultimate Comics. And the setting was Ultimate Comics. So, to me, that was the chance to take the old Marvel characters, bring them into a modern age, and keep it separate from the original. And so I liked Miles Morales specifically because he was, in junior high when he got his powers, which is a new dynamic. Honestly, I haven't really followed what they've done to him since, but I did like that story, and I do like the character, and I do like the position the character's in and the stories they're telling, and the stories are very accurate to in Spider-Verse to those original Miles Morales tales. But yes, he's not Peter Parker.
He's not Peter Parker. It's different story,
and that's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing is, I liked the fact that he existed in the Ultimate Comics universe, and you got to get to know him in that setting versus in the 616.
Well, the thing is this: I strongly recommend seeing this film, and I will see it again. I really enjoyed it that much and did not expect to. It was very, very surprising. In addition to, there's so many other aspects we could praise about the film: the voice acting, the music, all the various convergences of art styles, which is, if you're someone who's read like a comic on a long enough timeline, things will change, right? Like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, were the team for the first 100 issues of the Fantastic Four. Then it went to a different team, and it became slightly different and explored different. What's interesting is how so many different people in comics will contribute to the legacy and the world of a character. So this is sort of the culmination of that. It is literally about Star Wars fandom. Whether you're a fan of Peter Parker, or a fan of Spider-Punk, or a fan of Miles Morales, this movie has everything for every Spider-Man fan, if that makes any sense. And that's why I really enjoyed it, because, I'm seeing things in the background, and God, I'm probably going to have to get the disc of this film, because I hope that there is a behind the scenes that actually where you can identify like all of the different Spider-Man and then the sources for it. Like I had, when I was a kid, Amigo Spider-Man action figure that had like red hands, a Spider-Man head, and then it was basically a body that had on like a cloth Spider-Man outfit. I played with that thing. I put it on a string and I would spin it around and toss it and just play with it. This is when kids played with physical objects rather than screens. This was a bygone era. Okay. But yeah, I had a Spider-Man Mego action figure when I was a kid and loved that thing. I had Spider-Man. Oh my God. And I probably almost hurt myself doing this. I remember they had these Spider-Man things with suction cups. You could shoot webs.
Yeah.
I can definitively tell you, could not hold the weight of a young boy. 100% couldn't. I mean, they're basically for fun, for a goof. Okay. But yeah. And then the Spider-Man cartoon, when I was a kid, loved that cartoon. I mean, a lot of that stuff holds up, actually. The sort of jazz score, the rotoscoping on Spider-Man in that animated series, the very first Spider-Man animated, where they actually took film of a gymnast and then just rotoscoped over the gymnast Spider-Man. So there you go.
Yeah. Should we talk about the big question?
What's the big question?
Woke? Is it woke?
Oh, are people asking that? Yeah. I mean, the thing is this: there may have in fact been things in the background. I know there was like a thing on social media with a like poster of like a like.
Well, it was. I saw it. It was. In
I didn't see
Stacy's bedroom. It says "Protect Trans Kids."
Where did it say this?
On the wall. In Gwen Stacy's bedroom in the first 20 minutes.
I didn't even notice it.
Yeah,
I didn't even notice it.
I saw it there. I will say, with the exception of that, I wouldn't say this movie was woke. And the I'll point to the fact that being white wasn't an issue in this movie. Being black wasn't an issue in this movie. Being Latino wasn't an issue in this movie. It was just a Spider-Man tale. And
but what I like was the multiculturalism.
mm-hmm.
Like you see, like the Indian Spider-Man, I thought was particularly inspired.
Yes.
I thought that was really well done. And
I guess that was the Asian representation.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, Alan, you have to.
It's too late. Yeah, redo that. Yeah, that's how comedy works. Just redo the joke.
Yeah, just do it. Just say the joke again, and it'll be funny the second time.
Glenn can clip what I just did. There wasn't a whole lot of people that looked like me, but they were Asians.
No, there was the one, the girl in the robot
the one.
thing.
You just said
there was the one. You got one. Aren't you happy? Happy, Alan?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Look, this is the interesting point. You know, my daughter. One of the reasons why this movie is in her top 10 is because she related to Miles' story in a very personal way, and yeah, she saw herself. You know, and that's why I say it's not skin color, it's not your gender, it's not all this other crap. It's experience. If your character experiences the same thing you experience, then you are seen. That's how that works, not the other way around. And that's why my daughter is so connected with this movie, because she felt emotionally the impact of the hero of the movie, much like Luke Skywalker sitting out in the middle of the desert looking at the two suns. You know, the boys all over the world understood exactly what Luke was going through at that point, and they felt seen. Okay.
See, that's it. I felt the same way, in the sense that, like, just, you know, trying to balance your life and get the favor of your parents, right? Just
right.
And please them, while also trying to do well in school and whatnot. Like all those things are relatable. That's why I think Spider-Man has been a character that's endured through. I mean, Spider-Man, by the way, endured 60 years. And Spider-Man is the #1 most popular superhero, period. End of story. The second one that comes close, but there's a wide margin, is Batman. Batman is second. How do we know this? Has to do with merchandise sales. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to licensing and merchandise sales, the #1 superhero for merchandise is Spider-Man. And what I like is you can have many different versions of Spider-Man. And you can see yourself, whether you look like that person or not, in a particular Spider-Man's story. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see the popularity of Miles Morales, but I don't think what I like about this is it doesn't take away from Peter Parker. There's been an effort in other storytelling, we've talked about it before, where it's like, in order for a new hero to elevate, they have to basically, suppress the legacy character. That's not the case here. That's why this multiverse concept in this sense, I think, really, really works well. And we're going to tell it through the story of Miles Morales, who even is like, he wasn't technically supposed to be Spider-Man. That spider that bit him.
Well, hold on. I think you're getting into spoilers.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. But so that's not super spoilery, but like,
it's not, but honestly, I liked the reveal of that. And, that was a surprise.
Well, here, would you recommend Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Alan?
Yes, I would. Just know ahead of time. It's long. And it felt long. My God, that ending, I wanted that ending to end sooner than it did. And it just kept going.
Yeah, I will say same thing. Recommend, but too long, and you're not going to see a full story.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I mean, if they're smart, the sequel should be around 2 hours.
Hopefully, which comes out in March. So it's going to be quick, less than a year. Jazz Dub Says every kid has their generational films, each to their own. It's cool, Alan.
Yeah, we had a long discussion about Peter Parker versus Miles Morales on the ride home.
Well, I'd like to hear that discussion.
Yeah.
What'd you guys talk about?
I mean, it's just, I think that point is the main point. It's, each generation has their heroes, and Miles Morales happens to fall into my daughter's generation. Peter Parker, I grew up with Peter Parker when I was a kid, and vice versa for her. Miles for her.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with Miles Morales. In fact, I think Miles Morales is appealing in a different way that Peter Parker is appealing, right? But what I do like is that honor is paid to the legacy. Like, in a way, like at least in the last movie, Miles is kind of, looks up to Peter, almost like an older brother. And I felt like that dynamic really worked. But I like this movie better, even. Kind of, I know, surprising.
Yeah. But I'll just say that's where Marvel went wrong, was the Miles needed to remain in the Ultimate Universe, and Peter Parker needed to remain in the 616, and you can tell both stories parallel. And now that Marvel has conflated the two, like I said, I've bailed on them.
Alan, let's talk spoilers. Why don't you begin, because I have to get another cup of coffee. I'll be right back.
Spoilers, gosh, didn't we get to most of it? I mean, the big one, I guess we'll talk about, is just why Miles is who he is, and this was the most interesting thing to me, if story-wise. We're in the Spider-Man 2099 realm. All the Spidey people are there. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, whatever. But for some reason, Miles is singled out, and apparently he was bitten by a spider from the wrong dimension in the first movie. And Spider-Man should have never been who he was. Peter Parker never should have died in his universe. And I believe Chris alluded to Spider-Gwen being the same way, but I'm not sure about that. Yeah, to me, that was kind of the bright point of the movie in terms of me feeling like, okay, this is a comic book. This is a comic book story, to bring in Miles and say that he doesn't even belong in this universe. And kind of, and that's kind of the way he feels at home with his family, with his mom and his dad. And to me, that was the move. That was the move, the story point that sold me on this movie at that point, which occurs later on. But in terms of other spoilers, I'm not. Oh yeah, I guess, I don't know. I'm kind of waiting for this is surprised on me, but that, to me, that's the only real spoiler of this movie.
I do love this ending. It's so weird. Everyone's saying it's the Empire Strikes Back of Spider-Verse movies. It's like, fine. You can't, just because the way that the Empire Strikes Back, the way that ended at the time was such a big, it was such a big deal at that time. Like, that doesn't mean that every time, Miles Morales didn't get his hand cut off by his dad. And it's a very different, it's definitely a cliffhanger ending, but it's not Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. Oh, I remember Empire, the 3-year cliffhanger.
3 years you had to wait.
3 years.
Yeah, like, we're spoiled now. The second Spider-Verse film will be out. The follow-up to this part 2 is going to be out in March, unless they move it. What if they moved it to the fall? They see an opening.
They could. What, March is the slow period of time for films.
Yeah.